in which language models actually think. We saw this random news article on Finnish, or no, Estonian news that said, Finnish researchers claim ChatGPT thinks in English. And so we asked, how can we actually go about figuring out whether that's true scientifically? We kind of opened the box and we really looked inside the model, looked into all these messy vector representations to figure out what language it is that's going on in there. And it's actually true that today's language models think in English. And that's, of course, because the training data is mostly in English. It's such a great example that shows how everything depends on the training data. Because there's nothing special about English. If the model had been trained in Schweizerdeutsch, then it would have had Schweizerdeutsch representations on the inside. So I think that was an interesting finding. In general, it's not a job that's where people are employed for one employer. It's more precarious. You know, I have a gig here, I have an opportunity there. People will be often spread out over many different such platforms. Like when you go to an Uber car, often they will have the Lyft and the Uber. So that would be two providers, but in the crowdsourcing work, often it's a handful or even more that they rotate between and to just get what they can have. Yeah, people are often in English-speaking countries where they make little money, right? That's often a criterion. So it's countries like Kenya, the Philippines, India, and the likes, because often you need the data to be in English, and there you have people that have a very good level of English. It leads to interesting effects, like you have certain words and expressions, then ChatGPT will say them, although they're not really standard English, but they tend to be much more common, for example, in India. So ChatGPT loves these words like delve, let's delve into something, or the tapestry of something. And those are just overrepresented in the behavior of ChatGPT because the data that ChatGPT was trained on comes from regions in the world where those expressions are more frequent than average. Which is one way, by the way, to figure out where the training data comes from. You can look for these hard to find signals and do some data sleuthing. The work that we do is kind of sitting at the intersection between computers and humans. Although it's artificial intelligence, there is a big human element in that too, because intelligence, as we know it, is human. So even if it's artificial, kind of looking at that intersection, how can we make AI that is good for humans? How can we use human data in order to make better AI? What are the impacts that AI has on human society in computational social science? We are studying how humans tick by studying the digital traces that they leave behind. That is kind of the traditional mantra of computational social science, where instead of having to go and asking people survey questions and so on, we can look at all the stuff that people do on the internet, essentially. Since such big parts of our lives are now taking place in digital environments, that's where a lot of the interesting behaviors happen. And on top of that, a lot of our life is actually inherently about digital stuff. So we can't really even think of human society anymore without thinking about the computational aspect. And so that's kind of the reason to be for computational social science. So traditionally, computational social science is applying social science, applying digital technologies in order to answer social science questions about humans. But now we can also go the other way around, and we can use social science methods in order to understand computers better, because they act as entities now, as agents. So we can nearly do a social science of AI models. The grim vision would be that the internet will be full of computers talking to each other at some point. and you don't even know who you talk to. Overall, I'm wondering to what extent the internet and the web will remain truly human, or just like blah blah, mostly noise that you have to filter through, but you don't even know. I would wish to protect the kids better, because for us it's fine. We know a world where there were no cell phones and so on, but the kids don't, and they don't know to deal with that kind of stuff, and we're not taking care of them enough. I would make sure that in all countries we make sure that the digital media and so on that kids act on are safe. So I think some steps would be straightforward: to disallow social media below a certain age. It's a community problem, right? It's not something that you can do. I keep my kids from using social media. The whole point is that it's social media. It's network effects. So it will really have to be everywhere. Broad action. Kids, you talk to one another and not into your cell phone. Yeah, I think that would already go a long way. What I would wish for in myself is that I myself checked my cell phone less often and didn't use it at home. I think that would be the most obvious thing that I can already do without any legislation.